Yeah, so we have today our guest on Tech Labs and Bytes, and his name is Dr. Otiase. If I got that right.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, so Dr. Otiase, could you just tell us a bit about your journey into the tech industry? Yeah, could you just share a bit about how you got in and, what ultimately led you to becoming a cybersecurity expert?
Sure, certainly. Funny enough, my adventure began in most ways in Aberdeen.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, one of those days out there, I think I may have stumbled into purchasing something on a website that was from China. But obviously didn't pay attention at the time.
Okay.
Um, and then a couple of days or weeks later, Barclays was the bank I was using at the time, contacted me and were asking questions of, my location, if I was in some location in China at the time. And I was like, hey, what's going on? They were like, well, they've seen a couple of transactions on my account
Okay.
originating from China.
Hmm.
At the time, obviously, a student working minimum wage, it's not much in the account, but still, it was, it was a lot, for my uh, just to get by. But then those funds were being taken by someone somewhere. So I, jumped out of bed, told them, hey, look, I'm just down King Street. I haven't been to China in my life, so whatever you do, ensure, my phones are intact. I've
That's
got plans, so they were like, okay, cool, cool. We just wanted to be sure we'll reverse the transactions. You have the funds, and then we'll, sort of raise some inquiry and do the rest on our part. So that got me thinking. And then I quickly, went back and realized that at some point in one of the transactions I had attempted to, uh, initiate with, that vendor, I
okay.
probably exposed my card details.
Oh,
So it was my fault, for going to a website that wasn't secure at the time.
okay.
So that's where I got exposed. So, my money was safe with the bank. Thank God for their
Okay.
procedures. So I think that's where my first. I'd always heard about scam and all of that, but it never came to me. It never affected me. So I just got by. But after that incident, that was when I started, being curious. And then my dissertation actually centered on how the printers within the campus, how they
Mhm.
were interconnected. So I started, wondering all this whole wireless, how's it working, what's going on, and that's how, my curiosity just kind of began. So that was the birth of me in the tech space. So I came over to the US, and it was just, hey, what are you gonna do again? I went for a master's in cybersecurity, and I've just been in that space since then. After the master's in cybersecurity, I got an offer with Goldman Sachs. They were building the threat management center at the time, so it was the perfect time to come in and, sort of just from ground up, find my way around the cybersecurity space, find the pillar that works for me. And at first, I was just a general SOC analyst or a SOC generalist, like they call them.
Okay.
You start from level one to work your way up, and then you quickly find out how diverse, it can be. There are different branches or arms within the SOC space. So since then, I've just kind of focused on IR. That's my bread and butter now. I did my doctoral dissertation or
Same,
research.
same.
Yeah. I did that on IR. So we
Okay.
focused on incident response. So I am an expert in that field. I have worked now as an incident commander. So that's just where I'm focused. That's my niche. I try not to get too it's easy to get distracted in the
Mhm,
cyberspace with wanting to do a lot of things.
mhm,
My whole career projections has always been, be really great at something, know
mhm,
about others, because you do have to collaborate, but always just be the go-to guy on this one thing. And
mhm.
then, so that's my path, and that's how I arrived here.
Awesome. I mean, that's just amazing. I know I'm in the tech space, but I'm not in the cybersecurity space. So I'm actually learning one or two things from you. Um, so that's great. Um,
Yeah,
but again, another question,
yeah,
in your time being that you've worked, I mean, you've literally been in this career close to a decade. Am I right?
yeah. Funny enough, going that way already.
Hey, oh my God, that's so cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so what's the most absurd password you've ever seen someone use, and then you're like, nah, you're gonna get hacked.
I mean, we see them all the time. Uh, Something as easy as, hey, welcome home. Um, and then they're lazy enough to just change the characters to, something that, could just get broken within a second. Obviously, the ones that, you get advised not to is using the combinations of, a birthday, or, your name in that password. A lot of people still do that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of password managers out there, but if you're not within the tech space, a lot of
Mhm.
people don't have that information that they could, get a password manager that helps them generate passwords that are
Right?
effective, So people just go with memory and what is,
Have you seen one,
within
two, three, four,
reach.
five before?
You know, I've seen a lot of people get frustrated because, 1 minute they've reset the password, the next minute they've forgotten what password they've just reset it to. So I understand
Yeah.
all of that, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. I see it as value based, right?
Okay.
There's a general rule of thumb within the cyberspace that everyone is your data is out there. You know,
Okay. Well, that's
yeah.
really interesting to know because, a lot of times, we all get caught up in, I just want an easy password and I just type in
Hmm.
something. So, definitely making the password complex is one really good way to keep hackers away, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Great. So, if you could invent one tool within the cybersecurity space, right? And this tool would instantly stop cyber attack. What would it do? And it doesn't mind even if it's ridiculous, even if it's a ridiculous tool. Like, yeah, what
Yeah.
would you do?
Ah, inventing one tool.
Yeah.
Again, it will come back to my field. Right now there is a lot of traffic or a lot of innovation going on within automation and
Okay.
just the incident response space, and how we call the time to response ratios.
Okay.
My research focused on how to best improve those processes and strategies, and automation is a big part of that. Um, so just looking at that field, looking at what we can invent within the SIEM space, security, event management tool and system is something that would really go a long way. You would always need the human element within the SOC, right? A lot of people have talked about, AI taking a lot of jobs within different spaces. Um, right now we have automation going on to cut
Okay.
redundancy, but you always would need that human element to oversee threat detection. So that's one space I would say if there's one tool I would love to see or I would love to be part of innovating
Mhm.
is something that would be very seamless, something that also could involve a lot of I'm looking more so to the space of auditory functions.
Okay.
We're not there yet, but a tool you could engage in rather than typing, but also engaging, just like have your headset on
Okay.
and speak to and engage in. It will be challenging to really, really, it's like having an AI assistant in real time,
Okay.
right? And it's conversing, you're having back-to-back conversations. It's just like having another person to discuss. So that's something I've been thinking about. I haven't done a lot of research to see what the prospects are, but that's something that's interesting to me, and I think would really it would shake up things, if that were to ever, come to play. So,
Okay. And
mhm.
with this tool,
Mm.
basically, people, is it for cybersecurity experts or for users like myself?
Not users like yourself. It'd be
Okay.
it would
Okay.
just be yeah, it would just be for incident management.
It will
Yeah.
be
So, yeah.
for you
Yeah.
guys. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really great. That's really good. Okay, so what's your professional opinion on people thinking about, I mean, I personally am guilty of this. I remember back in those days, I used to feel like, you know what? If I'm actually using I- Igonito, I think that's what it's called, right?
Mm.
Igonito on Google browser, then I feel like, oh, my data is safe. No one's seeing what I'm doing. I can
Yeah.
do anything I want to do. So what's your take on it?
So again, going incognito, that's the selling point of it, going incognito, right? Google has that functionality to give you some sense of privacy for you to
Mhm.
feel like, hey, you know what, come here, do anything. But obviously, if you go incognito and you start to type, hey, where can I get um parts to assemble to make a bomb? You'll quickly find out how on incognito that tool really is, right?
Yeah,
Because
I know, right?
those are flash words that will quickly set off, a security infrastructure, and you'll quickly become, a target. And people want to know the right authorities will quickly give you a visit. So, in that
Yeah,
regard, is it private? Not
yeah.
necessarily, right? So it's just a false sense of security in my view.
Okay,
There are other tools out there that equally I've seen who are marketing some level of privacy, like DuckDuckGo.
okay.
Um, I've seen them also, market a lot of privacy approach-based marketing. They've also, sort of had a handle on ads. So unlike Google, or Edge or different browsers where, you're just browsing and it's always ads coming up, DuckDuckGo is a bit more relaxed on that end. This is not an advert for them in any way, but it's just do your research,
Hmm.
you quickly find what works for you. But as regards privacy, in the digital space, there
Yeah,
isn't anything like privacy. It's always a digital footprint, right? Your web history is always logged in. So whether or not you think, you know what, I was incognito the whole day, no one's in.
yeah.
Please, please. So, but if you start to find yourself in spaces where You need that level of privacy. I
Hmm.
use certain tools I'm not going to mention because it's work related.
Okay.
So that's
To archives, like, I get that for privacy, for,
mhm,
for we using the web. But what
yeah,
about others? Even if I'm on igno
incognito.
incognito
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah.
So, does that also mean, like, oh, maybe it's possible, like, an hacker would not be able to um hack into, maybe, the my accounts, maybe like my email accounts, or if I'm, using Instagram there, or any of my social medias.
So one general rule of thumb I always tell people, if it's on the web,
Hmm.
there's always that level of exposure you're open to, right? It's always there. Hackers don't have, or they don't, their motivations are their own, right?
Yeah,
And this is one thing you quickly learn in school. Basic general cybersecurity courses will tell you attacker patterns or attacker motivations, they're diverse, right? If they're
okay,
state sponsored, it's different, right? There
okay,
is a state back into that. If it's an individual attacker or if it's an individual hacker, it's even more difficult to pinpoint because now the motivation could just be as simple as gratification. Hey, I want to prove to myself that I can I can break down your system. Right? So
oh my
people
God.
like that, it's hard to really put a handle as to why you are
Yeah,
motivated to just want to break my system,
yeah,
right? There's some who do it for, fame. Those who are doing it for fame, you really can't, because whether you like it or not, fame is a huge factor. The same
yeah,
way you have people famous in the entertainment industry is the same way in the cybersecurity space. There is a community, and to be a recognized hacker within that space
oh my God.
is a driving factor.
I
So it's the
just,
same way people. Yeah, yeah.
oh,
Like there is a community of top dogs, so to speak,
oh,
within.
oh, yes,
Yeah, I can do this. That bragging right, it is a
yeah,
rush. I
uh,
can do this. Oh, I broke into NS's framework. Not
wow,
everyone can wake up and say that. So for you to be able to do that without maybe detection and roam within the network, even for a second, that is
mm,
huge bragging rights, right? So the motivating factor of the attacker is one thing that you quickly have to understand first, because then
okay,
you understand where they're coming from, and then you can address if it's for money, it's different. They'll come in, they take control, and then they tell you what their demands are. That's
okay,
straightforward. That you can deal with. But if it's someone who just wants to prove to a group of other people, I am better at this than you, you're in trouble at that point.
yeah,
Because now it's a competition between different people, especially if your your environment is the target. Now everyone
mm,
is, trying to brute force you or do one thing or the other. So just understanding the
yeah,
attacker
mm-hmm,
tactics, their
okay,
techniques and patterns,
okay,
that would help you then start to say, okay, you know what?
mm-hmm,
The tactics, what are the tactics? What are the techniques they're using? What are the patterns of actions over the last couple of days, months? What field are they interested in?
okay,
Who are they going after? What are their motivations? So if you're able to understand that, then you're able to then build a profile around detection and around response to them in that regard. So pretty
okay.
much
Oh, that's
that.
cool.
Yeah.
So you made mention, like, you are in the incident response team. So how
Yeah.
would you respond to um a scammer who just wants to mess up with, just feels like, okay, because you mentioned something, you're like, oh, there's some of them that like the bragging right. Oh, I was able to, mess someone up today, and
Yeah.
as a cybersecurity, he thinks he's an expert. Well, I'm gonna tell him I'm a good hacker or something. So been
Yeah.
tempted, with all of the, finishing emails you get, but have you ever been tempted to respond to a scam email just to mess up with a scammer and say, well, you're good at what you do, I'm good at what I do, so yeah.
Uh, yeah, so the thing about that is because we are in a space where we respond by definition, I'm responding, right? We set up detection tools to alert us, and then we respond. So by definition, in most ways, you're always, even though you want to be proactive, you're always reactive, waiting for them to take the initiative. You're only proactive in the sense that you have to keep up with trends to know what tools and what tactics they're going to be using so that when they use them, you're able to counter, with speed. Um, for a scammer or, something as simple as a BEC, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, Again, it's easy for me to sit down here and go off memory because it's something I already know,
Mhm.
right? But it's not something that, in reality you can engage that scammer. It's
Mhm.
a process, right?
Okay.
They spoof an email,
Okay.
they send out that email after already, spoofing it and hoping that you don't pay attention to the details.
Okay.
That's them looking to hijack that correspondence.
Well,
Now, what they do is they get into the email headers and sort of redirect traffic on that email. Um,
okay.
it's something as easy as, going into the email headers, spoofing it with rerouting the IPs,
Mm,
and then you not knowing that you just see an email, you reply to it, but
mm.
the chain of command on that email has already been tampered with. Rather than that email going back to the name you think you're sending it back to,
It's
is going back to
redirecting someone.
someone
Well,
else, right? So now they have they have a um first row seat into that communications, and then they could just embed it with malicious emails or malicious domains that also take you now to the domains they want you to take. Now you go into those domains that have already been set up to look like
mm,
the domain you're interacting with, and then you put in credential harvesting, all of that. You put in the details of maybe the payment that is involved in this transaction, and they have
yeah,
access to all of that, right?
nothing.
Before you know it, funds have already disappeared, and you're calling the other party you think you're in correspondence with, and they're telling you, hey, you know what, we never asked for so funds, we never initiated anything, but you've already, been communicating with someone who,
Oh,
was just sort of in the middle, um, redirecting you elsewhere. And that's the whole beauty of the BEC scam.
mm,
We have a host of tools out there that help. Proofpoint is one that's known within the industry. Proofpoint helps with email.
mhm,
But if you're going to be an email security expert, like I said at the beginning,
mhm.
you start from SOC, you become a generalist, and part of that is also handling email. And there's something you can focus on email security and become an expert at email security and make a career out of just email,
Are you serious?
right?
Wow.
You're not doing anything else. You're just an email security expert. So that's how broad
The
the
cybersecurity.
SOC going the SOC route
Okay.
can really help you. I've seen people who just do it. Oh, you know what? I want to be the email guy on this team, and
Oh.
you become you become uh the SME, the email SME. Once you become the email SME, you continue to hone your skills. Anything email comes to you, and you start to build your career as just the email person. It doesn't mean you can't do anything else. It just means this is who we go to once it's email security concern. And part of doing that, the first way I tell people is just get curious. The principles of email security is understanding email headers.
Okay.
If you start to understand email headers,
Mm,
then you have a shot at knowing what an email is. the other day I traveled to Mexico and I was on my way back
Okay.
and border patrol, kind of was asking questions because they ask you, hey, who do you work for? What do you do? They're curious,
Yeah.
but they also want to see that you know what you're doing.
Okay.
So what I typically do is I get them engaged. So he had an Apple phone, so I was like, hey, sure, you want to know what I do? Open up your phone.
Okay.
He opened up his phone, he went to his email. I said, go your email. And I said, you receive a lot of emails, right? He was like, sure. I was like, type up Apple. And then he typed Apple in the search bar, and obviously a ton of emails come just from first glance, because it's what I do. I know there's certain typographical errors that come with fraudulent emails. They're never 100% grammar error free. So just
Mhm.
off of eyesight, I'm able to tell you. But if you're not in that space, you don't know, right? So just off of that, I was like, I opened that one. He opened it, and then I said, click on the email address. Um, on that email, he clicked on it, and then we're able to determine the actual email domain wasn't Apple itself. It was some random long domain, but it was masquerading as Apple. Now,
Well,
he would think that email was generated and sent from Apple. It was a correspondence from Apple. And then by the time you go in and reply that email
yeah.
or click any link within that email,
Hmm.
you have already welcomed in an adversary into your system.
Oh, I see. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
so it's a lot of all these details that a lot of people on a day-to-day are exposed to. They don't know. So
Mhm.
once it comes to email,
Mhm.
the general rule of thumb is if it's not something you're expecting, don't even open it.
Okay.
Just let it be.
Okay.
Let it be. That's I see a lot of it on my emails. Have over 20,000 emails I'm not looking at, right? Because again, if I have no business to, why am I even looking at it, right? But when you start to check into everything, you're bound to get drawn into something,
Mhm.
and that's how you start to expose yourself.
Into their really
Um,
great, juicy offerings, like,
you
if
know,
you love to shop, like myself.
there you go. So it's easy to, just reel you guys in with,
Yeah.
all these offers, and they're always there. They're constantly gonna be there.
Hmm.
Um, so if it's not correspondence you're expecting, like for instance, if you are applying to get into grad school, you know you're applying, so you know that if I get a correspondence from that school,
Yeah.
it's expected.
Yeah.
That doesn't say you shouldn't pay attention to the email because it also is at risk of being spoofed, right?
Yeah.
But you know you're expecting a correspondence from the school
Yeah.
because you've engaged them for a service.
Yeah.
But now if you haven't reached out to Harvard and you start to see Harvard, 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 I can guarantee you Harvard isn't looking for you. You know, so you they're not looking for you. They don't, that's not their general rule of thumb. They're not out there, marketing. So why are you thinking you're now so special that they're harassing you with emails? No, it's someone else,
Yeah.
right? So these are the mindsets, people have to incorporate once it comes to email security. And when you see it, if you open it, it's not something you want to delete it or just block the sender. Um, put the sender on a block list and, go from there. Yeah.
Also, like I've
Hmm.
learned so much today, honestly. So I will definitely be looking at those email domains every time I
Yeah.
email. That's for sure. So another of my question is, if an hacker were to hack you, what's the one decode trap you would set to confuse them? How would you want to confuse them?
Sorry, sorry, said it again, you broke off.
So I was saying, if an hacker they
Yeah.
wanted to hack you, maybe hack your emails or, try to get into your social media accounts. And you
Hmm.
just wanted to sort of like make them confused? Like you're aware, of course, you are the cybersecurity expert, but you are aware of it. And then you kind of like, what's the
Hmm.
trap you set to kind of like, create a decoy? Would you? What?
So, yeah, so that's interesting because I have seen a couple come true. No matter how safe you say you are,
Yeah.
a few would always come true. And best practice is never to engage.
Oh,
But
okay.
but because when you engage, that's a channel you're opening, right? And once a channel is open, it's anyone's guess what can happen in the course of that conversation, right?
Okay.
So there's that. So I generally just don't even take the bait, right? But when I see things like that, I just quickly go into my safe parameters, so to speak, to ensure that they're still pretty much very active,
Okay.
right? So it's say for instance in Instagram, Instagram has some level or measures of authentication that you could use to, help ascertain or safeguard your account. I've seen people who get hacked and then it becomes a whole issue and then they have to contact Instagram. But by the time Instagram, initiates the process of helping them retrieve the account, a lot of damage has already been done
Yeah.
with the account already reaching out to people to try and maybe scam some money out of their contact list and things like that. So you always want to keep up or be up to date at least with some of, I know we don't like to read policies from some of this, but occasionally when they make their application updates, they're always trying to improve, right? I bet a lot of people who don't know that on WhatsApp there are authentication protocols that are set up in place where you could give, an email to use as a backup to retrieve your account. A lot of people's accounts are just, up for grabs right now because once they grab your account, it's done.
Mm,
So you always want to ensure that you keep up with those sort of informations,
mhm.
safeguard yourself first and not wait, to then spring into action when you're already compromised.
Mhm.
Now, in real time, for me, when I see things like this, it's a case of, containment. So I go into my general IR space or IR mindset.
Mhm.
If there's risk of exposure within a system, within any of the systems I use, I generally just contain it quickly and isolate that system in itself before it starts to, or before I determine the length of exposure, because I don't want that now to then start to spread within my whole network.
Yeah.
So it depends on, your bandwidth, what you do with your systems and things like that. I have VMs, I have different systems on my network. So if I'm suspicious of anything, I'm always within my task managers looking for different processes running in the background to see if there's anything that I haven't initiated that is running.
Okay.
And, I go into it and start to, understand why it's running. If it's something that I initiated or is running to help with efficiency of the system, yeah, but if it's suspicious, I shut it down immediately.
Mhm.
But for folks on a regular day to day, you just want to ensure your practices are safe, and you're not visiting sites you have no business visiting or opening up emails and replying,
Yeah.
to emails that in the first place you have no business replying
Right.
to. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Hmm.
what's the first sign, and that's just simply because, someone like myself, I do make use of social
Hmm.
media all the time. What's the first sign to know that I have been hacked?
So the first sign to know, it could be a host of things. One thing as blatant as having a slow system,
Oh,
um,
okay.
is a big. deal
Okay.
because if you have a system and you are not um a user who has your system running at full capacity,
Okay.
you don't have processors running to warrant uh, the reason why your system is now all of a sudden slow because memory is low,
Yeah.
then that in itself is almost a telltale that okay, your memory is being engaged in something else in the
Yeah.
background. So you always want to pay attention to that.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of cookie accepting uh, going on these days. You want to be careful with things like that because obviously it's all we live in a data driven society now where, you know, data is power, data is money. I mean, data
Mhm.
is everything, right?
Gosh.
So everyone collecting your data, you don't know what they're doing with it, you don't know if they're selling it,
Yeah.
you know,
You
so
see,
you wanna
oil though.
yeah. So you just want to always be careful and always pick up on signs with your system. I always say the system is almost like a car, right?
Yeah.
You have you have this bond with your car where, well, for me, right?
Mhm.
I get into a car, especially my cars,
Okay.
and I quickly sort of just sync with the car that I know how it drives.
Okay.
The minute something is off with that car's system or engine,
Hmm.
you can feel it.
Hmm.
So it's the same with your system. You are the user. You use your car you use your system every day.
Hmm.
You log in, you're working, and something seems off. You
Yeah.
again, being a cybersecurity personnel, I always tell people you cannot function fully or properly if you do not have a healthy level of paranoia in you.
Why is that?
Yeah. So again, the thing with cybersecurity is you always have to be paranoid that your system is exposed. You always have to be paranoid that, oh, someone has access to your system. So that keeps you on your toes to always want to be effective in your defensive approach.
Okay.
So always assume that attackers are after you. Always assume that, hey, you know what, something
One of the amazing stuff you shared today, I'm like, what advice would you have for someone
Mm.
who's thinking, oh, well, I want to be like Dr. Odiase, you know,
Ah.
cybersecurity expert. He plays around with all these tools, he probably has, done some really, really amazing work. And I just want to, be like him.
Again, would I say aspire to be like me? I don't know. I don't know. I would just say, every day wake up,
Hmm.
aspire to be a better version of yourself.
Hmm.
Never stop dreaming. The ability to dream is what keeps you up. It keeps you alive.
Hmm.
In that regard, don't sell yourself short. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to be curious, right? Curiosity um, is also, um, in some ways, they say the mother of invention.
Hmm.
So you're curious enough. You will eventually break stuff along the way, but that's you learning
Yeah.
to improve.
Mhm.
So have that mindset. Life is short. Do it today, and it'll work out.
Great, awesome. So,
Yeah,
and for yourself, I mean, with all the knowledge that you have now,
yeah.
and with everything with all your achievements you've accomplished, what would you want to say to your younger self?
To my younger self, that's I've never really thought about that, but to my younger self,
With what you've known, with what you know now,
yeah,
before you entered into the tech ecosystem,
yeah.
and now that you are, fully, integrated into the system, what would you tell the younger self?
So tell my younger self, it's tricky because now looking back at it, I don't want to come across and say, hey, you know what, I've done everything in a perfect sense, and
Yeah.
there's nothing to say. I'm trying to pat myself and say, hey, stay the course.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's also easy to say, hey, you know what, don't get distracted,
Mm,
right?
makes sense.
Just stay true to your convictions, because one of the things I always set out to do at our early age is always know what I want out of life
Okay.
and stay true to that.
Okay.
There will come distractions.
Hmm.
Um, if you're true to yourself, you'll stay the course. If you're not, you will waver. And when you waver is when things start to get a bit complicated. And you might see some short signs of success in you wavering.
Hmm.
But in the long run, it won't necessarily be worth it,
Okay.
at least for me. My long run has always been worth it because it takes me longer to achieve certain things because I look around, I look at certain people, I look at certain acquaintances, and they take all these short courts.
Yeah.
And in the immediate future, it seems like they're doing great, 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 right? But along the line, I see them always jumping from career to career to career because they're following shortcuts and they're just following maybe the money at the time. So
Mhm.
if that's what you want to do, good on you. But if you say, hey, I want to become an expert in something, I want to be, you know, the guy who is known for something that it will take long nights. You have to stay true to that. So,
Mm. Amazing. So stay away from distraction and focus on your goals or what you want to become. Absolutely. I 100%
yeah.
agree with you. But yeah, thanks for that insight. But just, back to, I know we are running out of time, but I've got
Hmm.
some, probably just two more questions. Uh, and this one has to do with a movie that I watched a while
Okay.
ago. I don't know if you've seen
Okay.
it, but it was titled 24. And one of my favorite characters in 24 was Chloe. Chloe was a hacker. Like she was really good. Like I would see how she would try to hack into stuff like in three
Hmm.
seconds. And I was like, oh my God, how? So now I know you are the cybersecurity expert. So I'm like, how? You doing in 3 seconds? Shoot us.
Yeah. So with that process and knowing how that works in real time,
Yeah.
funny enough, I am binge watching 24 again. I think I'm in season 4
Very
now, so I
good.
understand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, I am binge watching 24 again. That's all I've been doing in the last couple of weeks in the background.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so what Chloe achieves is what we call in cybersecurity having access to machines where in the background you could use different programs like Linux. Right now we could use a tool like CrowdStrike.
Okay.
So with a tool like CrowdStrike, I'm able to, if you have that within your system,
Okay.
it it has the ability to ensure that all systems within that infrastructure are interconnected. So that's why it also serves the risk of um, if a hacker gets into one system,
Okay.
there is the potential to spread that virus within the entire network. So,
Ooh,
because these systems are all interconnected, from one system, you could move into the next
okay.
to sort of control what's going on there.
Okay.
So that's where the risk of a hacker, detonating a program within one system has the potential of shutting down an entire network. So
Mm,
once things like that happen, our mindset is also always looking forward to just containing that one system first before the
mhm.
spread becomes rampant within the system. So what Chloe was able to do in this modern day and age is use, for instance, a system like CrowdStrike. Within CrowdStrike, you're able to sort of do a root cause analysis
Okay.
into a particular system, and all that does is you just use certain functions. You're able to then log into any system within or any machine within
Ah.
your system.
Mm.
So all I use the word machines
Mhm.
because each system technically is a machine, but then
Mhm.
each machine is on a system or, you know, a security infrastructure where you're able to then say, oh, all of them work to achieve a certain goal.
Okay.
So you have access, depending on your access level.
Mhm.
If you have a
Mhm.
certain access level, that's why when you watch, sometimes Chloe wants to do something, she doesn't have the required access
Thanks. Yeah.
level, and then either Jack or Tony Almeida, they come in and they impute their
Yeah.
level of security clearance or code, and then that gives them access to that system within the network. So just because we all work in the same office doesn't mean the level of security clearance I have
Mhm.
or the access to the information I have is the same the person next to me has.
Yeah.
So some of these informations are user access friendly, or some of them are on need to know basis.
Okay.
So from that regard, then you then start to say, okay, I have access and I'm able to then maybe, initiate a protocol that allows me access into any machine within that system. So,
Oh, thank you so much for explaining that because at first I was like, is she some computer whiz? Like, she just does this really quickly.
yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, that was really insightful, especially for myself. So thank you so much. But before we let you go, I've got the final question. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about AI, right? So the AI
Mm.
trend. So what's your take on AI?
Um, Again, my take on AI is it is interesting. Don't shy away from it.
Okay.
The thing with learning is always be open to new and innovative approaches, especially if it's something that cuts across different industries,
Okay.
right? So we can't ignore the benefits of having AI being introduced into our daily lives. It will only get better.
Okay.
At the same time, are there going to be drawbacks? Of course, there are going to be drawbacks, right? So it's finding that sweet spot or that balance.
Mhm.
So if you're a new entrant into the tech space,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you should shut it out completely. No, be open to a lot of what's going on. Definitely, have your go-to sites where you keep up with trends. And just stay abreast. If you could take up projects within the AI space, certainly feel free to do so. It is an interesting space. So yeah,
Thank you so much, Dr. Diase. All right. Thank you
I would.
and have a lovely day.
All right, all right. Thanks for having me, Tesla.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.